last service that we have today, in the form of a meetup group, the energy of the Hebrew letters. Last week we went over all of the letters, all 22 letters in their final forms, also the begad kapet letters, as well as the numerical values and their pronunciations, with a dagesh, without a dagesh. We covered all of that thoroughly last week. You can watch that class on Ustream. We did record it and put it out there. We've also covered that material in the past, and we have it available on our website. The printed material that we use is also available on our website. What's our website again? etshaym.weebly.com. 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 You can view some past sessions there, as well as going to YouTube and looking up Energy of the Hebrew Letters on YouTube that we did last week. And you can also print out the handouts that we're using, that we're reading from during the class off of our website. So before we begin, as always, we begin by praying the alphabet and asking the Lord to take these prayers, as we pray these holy and divine letters, we ask the Lord to take these letters and form words and praises and prayers and supplications that are agreeable to His will. The Bible says we know not how to pray. So if we give Him our letters, His divine letters back to Him, He can rearrange them and form the type of the prayers and praises and supplications that are most needed to be prayed, that we don't have knowledge of. So before we begin, as always, we pray the Aleph Bet 3 times. Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Het, Tet, Yod, Kaf, Lamed, Mem, Nun, Samik, Ayin, Hey, Sadi, Quoth, Resh, Shin, Tav. Again, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Het, Tet, Yod, Kaf, Lamed, Mem, Nun, Samik, Ayin, Hey, Sadi, Quoth, Resh, Shin, Tav. Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Het, Tet, Yod, Kaf, Lamed, Mem, Nun, Samik, Ayin, Hey, Sadi, Quoth, Resh, Shin, Tav. Vishem Yeshua. Amen. Thank you, Lord. There are 22 letters in the Aleph Bet. We prayed it 3 times, so that's a total of 66 letters per person that was prayed. That's a lot of letters. A lot of words can be formed out of those letters. A lot of prayers and praises and supplications can be offered up out of those very letters that we just prayed. Amen? Okay. Let's look at the part of the handout called the Hebrew vowels. The Hebrew vowels. There are 9 basic vowels in the Hebrew language. 5 of them are long and 4 are short. There's more than 9, but there are 9 basic fundamental vowels. They have a spiritual connotation to them, as well as a grammatical use in the language and how to pronounce words. But they're also, just like the letters, they're spiritual as well. Let's just get right into it. When we look there, let's look at the long vowels. The first long vowel that we see there is what? Komat. Say it out. Komat. It looks like a little T up under the letter. And it is pronounced like A in father, long A, commas, long A. Whenever we see that, for instance, if we were to look at that letter with the letter Hey, remember the letter Hey has the H sound. So if a commas was under the letter Hey, it would be ha, H-A, ha. That's how we would pronounce it. A commas, long A as in father. It is class A. It is transliterated as an A with a bar over it. The next letter is called a shurik yod. And whenever a dot appears up under a Hebrew letter, followed by the Hebrew letter yod, it is called a shurik yod. Shurik yod. Exactly, there's two components to it. You see that dot up under the Hebrew letter, and then the following letter is a yod. That yod and that dot are the vowel, and both are pronounced like a long I, like the I in machine, machine. The I in machine. The dot and the yod are the vowel. The dot and the yod are the vowel, pronounced like a long I, as the I in machine. It is an I class letter, and it is transliterated as I superscript Y. Okay, the third long vowel is a seri. It's called a seri. And whenever two dots, as you can see there, it is two dots. Those two dots are called a seri, and it is pronounced like a long E in they. They. Long E. Seri. Two dots up under the Hebrew letter. Again, if we use the letter Hey, if it has two dots up under it, it's a seri. It will be the letter Hey is an H sound with a seri up underneath it. It would be he, or maybe hey. Very simple. The fourth vowel is called a holum. A holum. Now this is a somewhat, well, not really unique, but this is the type of vowel that uses an actual Hebrew letter as well as some other dot or indication. For instance, let's say we had a vowel, as you see there, and a dot is on top of the vowel. That is considered full, and it's called a holum vowel. A holum vowel. Holum vowel. And it is pronounced, whatever letter is before it, again, if there was a hey, and then a vav, and a dot on top of the vav, that dot and the vav, and the letter vav, is the vowel. Again, the dot and the letter vav is the vowel. Whenever you have a vowel, and you have a dot on top of it, it's called a holum vowel. If there was a letter hey in front of it, it would be pronounced ho, ho, because a holum vowel has an O sound, as in row. It's a U class vowel, and it is transliterated as O superscript V. Remember that here yo was I superscript Y. A holum vowel is O superscript V, as you see there. Okay. Now, if there is another letter and there's a dot on top of it, it is still a holum, but it is considered defective. but it is pronounced O as in roll, just like the Holum vowel. There's no difference. The letter and the dot on top is the vowel. You don't read the letter. You don't try to read the letter. You look at it as one unit, the dot and the letter itself. It's called a holum, just a holum. You don't pronounce the Hebrew letter that is up under that dot. You pronounce the Hebrew letter under the dot as an O. You treat it just like an O. Now the fifth long vowel is called a shurik. A shurik. And whenever you have a vowel and a dot, whenever you have a vowel, the letter vowel, and the dot is in the middle of the letter vowel, it is called a shurik. We say that again. When you see the letter vowel, the Hebrew letter vowel, and the dot is in the center of the vowel, to the left of the vowel, in the center. You won't see it anyplace else. It's called a shurik, and it has a double O sign, like in cool. It's also U class, and it's transliterated U with a circumflex, or like a little house on top of it. So when you have a vowel, and the dot is on top, it's a Holum vowel, pronounced like a long O. When you have a vowel and the dot is in the center of the vowel, it's a shurik, and it's a double O sound, like in cool. Now those are the 5 long vowels. The Quamats, long A, Hirik Yo, long I, Seri, long E, Holum Vav, long O, or just a Holum when the dot is above any other Hebrew letter. It's just a Holum. Now don't confuse that. Now there's some exceptions to this rule. When you see the letter Sheen and it has a dot on top of it to the right, it is pronounced Sheen. The sound is SH, Sheen. If the dot is on the left side at the top, in the left top corner, it's pronounced Sin, like SN, Sin. So remember that about the letter Sheen. But any other letter is going to either be a Holum, or a Holum Vav, or a Vav with the dot in the center will be a shurik, double O. So those are the 5 Hebrew long vowels. Now there are 4 short vowels. The first one is just a little line, like a minus sign, up under the Hebrew letter, a minus sign. And that's called a patah. And it's a short A as in far, or in fact. Short A as in fact. Looks like a minus sign, and it's called a patah. A class, transliterated A. The long vowels will always have some kind of a bar or a circumflex on top, and the short vowels will just be A. Like in the case of a patah, it's a short A, fat. Class, it's a class A vowel, and the transliteration is A. The next is called a hirik. Remember we had a hirik yo? Now we just have a hirik. And that's just one dot up under the Hebrew letter. One dot. It's called a hirik. And it's a short I as in bit, B-I-T, class I, transliterated I. One dot, hirik. The next is called a segol. And it looks like 3 dots in an inverted triangle. You have 2 dots on the first line, and then on the second line up under it is 1 dot. Looks like an upside down triangle. It's called a segol. And it's a short E sound, as in bed. Bed. B-E-D. It's an I-class vowel. It's transliterated as an E. The fourth and final basic short vowel is called a quibbutz. A quibbutz. And it looks like a series of descending dots up under the Hebrew word from the left. Starting from the left, there will be 3 dots in descending diagonal order. Descending from the upper left to the lower right. 3 dots. Called a quibbutz. It is a U sound as in put, P-U-T, U sound as in put. It's class U, and it's transliterated as U. Those are the 9 basic vowels. Those vowels, like I say, have a spiritual connotation to them. Each one of them corresponds to one of the 9 sephirot as well. We'll learn more about that later, particularly on our Monday night meetup in the neuroplastic Kabbalah class, where we will be discussing the spiritual side to these vowels in Kabbalah. We'll talk maybe talk a little bit about it in the interview of the Hebrew letters too, but primarily we reserved Monday night for neuroplastic Kabbalah to discuss the spiritual side. Okay? Now, there are 5 other, well, it's actually more than 5, but there are other vowels as well. There's a vowel called a Hataph. Hataph. And it's an O sound. It's a short vowel, so O as in hold, H-O-L-D. It is a U shape, a U class, and it's transliterated O. It's a short vowel, transliterated O. Hataph. Now notice it looks just like a quibbutz. It's called a Hataph, but it looks just like a regular quibbutz, like a long A. But in this case, it is a short O. When you see the quibbutz, that T up under the vowel, it's either going to be a quibbutz with a long A sound or a Hataph with a short O sound. The way that you distinguish between the two is that a Hataph only occurs in a closed, unaccented syllable. Closed, unaccented syllable. Now we'll get into how to recognize that when we get into syllabication, which will probably be next week. We might get into some of it today, but I might just reserve it for next week. Now the next type of vowel is called a schwa or shiva. Schwa or shiva. And it occurs in a word in the form or under a Hebrew letter. You'll see 2 dots vertically in a row. 2 dots vertically in a row. One right up underneath the other. Remember, the seri also has 2 dots underneath the Hebrew letter or the consonant, but the seri is horizontal. 2 dots side by side. Let me say that again. The seri, which represents a long E sound, is depicted by 2 dots horizontally side by side. The schwa or the shiva is depicted by 2 dots vertically, one right up underneath the other. It says the schwa occurs both as silent and vocal. When vocal, it is pronounced as a very short E, like in severe. And when we get into syllabication, we'll determine, I'll show you how to determine whether or not it is silent or if it's vocalized when we go to syllabication. And it's transliterated as a upper, like a superscript E, like an exponent E, I should say. Superscript or exponent E. I don't know if is an exponent like a superscript. Am I saying that right? Okay. Just like the shurik yod is I exponent Y, and the Holum vav is O exponent V. The schwa, the vocal schwa, is exponent E, all by itself, exponent E. Okay? Now there are three more vowels that you'll see quite often. The schwa you will see quite often. The hamat, the quamat, hatuf you'll see often enough. And the next three you will see often. The first of which is called Hataph. 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 Hatuf is H-A-T-U-F. Okay? And the Hataph is H-A-T-A-F. Hataph. Okay? Now, the way it is depicted is by two dots up under a Hebrew letter or consonant, just like the schwa is depicted. Two dots in a vertical line directly, one on top of the other, followed by a patah. That's why it's called hataph patah, followed by like a minus sign. And these are very short vowels. A hataph patah has an A sound like in along. Transliterated A with like a little half bowl on top of it. A is an along, depicted by two vertical dots followed by a minus sign or a patah. Remember, we read Hebrew from right to left. From right to left. The next is called Hataph Sigo. Hataph Sigo. And it's depicted by two vertical dots and the three dots of the inverted pyramid, just like we had in the Sigo. We had three, two dots on the first line, and then up under that, and splitting them down the middle is a single dot. So it forms an inverted triangle, an upside down triangle. And that's Hataph Sigo. And it has an E sound like in effect, E-F-F-E-C-T, effect. Transliterated E with the little half bowl on top. Next is Hataph Quamat, depicted by two vertical dots again, like a schwa, followed by a quamat, that T that we see in the quamat for the long A. But it's Hataph Quamat, Hataph. So it's an O sound, a short O, like in only, O-N-L-Y, transliterated by an O with the half bowl on top. Okay? Now we're going to go over some vowels called diphthongs or some other pronunciations, some very special vowels that you don't see too often, but you do have to be aware of them because they do exist, and you have to take note of them. Okay? One of the first is called a serial. Instead of just one dot being up under the consonant or the Hebrew letter, you have two on a vertical line, just like a seri, immediately followed by a yod, by the Hebrew letter yod. So it's a serial, and it is a long sound like an A, like the A in ape. called a seri-yod. Seri-yod. Another one is called a Composite hey. It will be a Hebrew letter or consonant with a composite up under it, immediately followed by a hey. Immediately followed by a hey. And it has a transliterated as a, and it's pronounced as a long A sound. A long A sound. Composite hey. The composite is part of the vowel. You do not pronounce the hey. You look at that as one unit. The composite up under the consonant, immediately followed by the letter or the consonant hey. It's the composite and the letter hey are treated as one sound together, as one unit, an A sound. I already told you that like a Holum vowel is considered full, but a Holum on the top of any other letter is still pronounced the same. It's called a Holum, but it's considered defective. Okay? Also, the Holum vowel that's full is also called plena, P-L-E-N-A. You can read this, on your handout there. Now, there are some letters that are quiescent, meaning that they're silent. And the reason why they're silent is because most Westerners can't really pronounce them properly. They're pronounced in the throat. They're called gutturals. And they're basically, it's really three, but right here it only talks about two. That's the aleph. The aleph, has an A sound, but it absorbs the vowel that's under it. You'll pronounce it, for instance, if there was a seri up under an aleph, it would be more like an E sound. You can say A-E sound or just a long E sound. It said quiescent letters are the consonants aleph and he. When they are not pronounced, that is, they have no vowel following them. Now, when they say following them, that means right under them. You have the letter, then the vowel is right under the letter. The vowel is coming after the letter. Whenever you see aleph without a vowel up under it, and hey without a vowel up under it, they're silent. You don't really pronounce them. When the hey at the end of a word, we call that final hey. Usually when hey appears at the end of the word, it's not pronounced. It says here, when the hey at the end of the word is to be pronounced, but has no vowel, it will receive a mapping, which is a dot. It's a dot within the hey. The letter hey with a dot inside of it, or a mappy inside of it, is transliterated as an H with parentheses around it. And it just tells you pronounce the H sound. When you see a final hey, that means the hey is at the end of the word, and they want you to pronounce it. It'll have a dot inside of it. It'll have a dot inside of it. Then you would just simply pronounce the H sound of that hey. Okay? Now, let's move on to a classification of vowels called diphthongs. Diphthongs. A diphthong is, we have a word in English called athlete. If we were to pronounce it all the way out, we would say athlete, athlete, but it's a diphthong, so we say athlete. Okay? And Hebrew likewise has some diphthongs. The first of which is a patah yod. A patah up under the consonant, immediately followed by the Hebrew letter yod. It is pronounced as AI, as in isle. A-I-S-L-E. AI, isle. AI, isle. Patah yod. We've already seen the seriod pronounced as like an A in 8. There's another one called a sagol yod, also pronounced like the A in 8. So a seriod and a sagol yod are both pronounced like the A in 8. Whenever you have a sagol immediately followed by the Hebrew letter yod, it's pronounced like an A in 8, a short A. Same way with the seriod. So whenever you see a yod or a vav, you know to kind of be on guard. You know, some interesting things happen around the letter yod and around the letter vav. Because you know we have Holum vav, we have the shurik, and with the yod we have the hirik yod, which is the long I sound, one of the basic vowels. But we also have seriods, and we also have sagol yod, and we have a patah yod. And a patah yod, again, is pronounced like the AI in I. Okay? Now, another one, and there's no particular name for this one, but whenever you see a consonant with a chromatz up under it, immediately followed by a yod and a vav, it is pronounced A-V. You don't pronounce the yod. The chromatz, the yod, and the vav are all one unit again. So you got to be careful when you see yods and vowels. And you know, what precedes them? What comes after them even? Okay? Because now that's a strange one. You pronounce it A-V, like ah. A-V. You ignore the yod, you pronounce the A of the chromatz, and the V of the vav as the vowel. Ah. You act like the yod is not there. So always be on guard when you see yods and vowels. You got to look at them carefully. Now there are three more. There is when you have a yod, and when you have a yod followed by a holum vav, that is a vav with a dot on top of it, is pronounced Y-O, yo. Yo followed by a holum vav, pronounced yo, Y-O. When you have a holum vav followed by a yod, it's pronounced oi, O-Y, oi, O-Y. So reverse it is yo, reverse it again is oi. Oi is holum vav yod, and yod is yod holum vav. And then the last one is a yod followed by shurik. Remember, the shurik is a vav with the dot in the middle of it. And that's you, like you-hoo. Y-O-O, you-hoo. You, oi, and yo. So you have, you know, only thing I can just keep telling you, whenever you see a yod, think about it. Whenever you see a vav, think about it. You know, is it a diphthong? Is it a seriod? Is it a sagol yod? Is it a hirik yod? Is it, you know, the patah, you know, the patah, not patah yod, but the chromatz vav? that's pronounced AV, where you have the quamats, the yod, and the vav, and you totally ignore the yod there. So be careful when you see vowels and yods. Look for dots, whether the dots in the middle, whether the dots on top. You have to look for dots all the time anyway. When we get to syllabification, I'll tell you why. Well, you have to determine if it's a dagesh, if it's you just have to be on guard for dots too. Because dots are vowels. Dots sometimes just harden the sound. Remember last week we talked about the letter bait. When there's their dagesh, a dot in the center of it, it hardens the sound and makes it B, like bait. When it's no dagesh in the center of the bait, it's pronounced vet. It's soft as a vet and bait. So dots can also double a letter. The dagesh can either just change the sound, or it can double the letter. Depending, the begad kapet letters, beit gimel dalet, kaf pei tav, those letters simply harden the sound. They don't double it. But the other letters in the Hebrew alphabet, it doubles it, except in the case of the sheen. If it's on the right, it's pronounced SH sound. If the dot is on the left, it's pronounced SN sound. So you have to look at the dots and remember the exceptions to the rules. And, is this a dagesh that's going to double the letter, or is this just a dagesh that's going to harden the sound of the letter? Or is it a moppy? Is it a final, is it a moppy and a final hit? What does a moppy or a dagesh do? It's called a moppy when it's in a final hey. What does that do to that hey? What do you have to do if it's a final hey, a hey occurring at the end of a word, and it has a dot in it or a moppy in it? What does that mean you do?
Pronounce it.
You pronounce the H sound of that letter hey. Okay? Now, we have another condition here with regard to vowels that we have to pay attention to. Sometimes the patah, not sometimes, when the patah, when it comes under a final hey with a moppy or under a het without a moppy, it is pronounced before the consonant and is known as furtive patah. Furtive patah. So if you got a final hey and it has a moppy in it and a patah under it, you pronounce the patah first. Normally, when a vowel is up under a letter, you pronounce, when a vowel is up under a letter, you pronounce the letter first and then the vowel that's up under. When the vowel is up under a letter, it's following the letter. It's coming after the letter. So when you have a vowel up under a Hebrew letter, it follows the letter. So if you say have a hey that's in the middle of a word and it has a patah up under it, you pronounce it ha. Or even at the beginning of the letter, of a word, I mean. You got a hey and you got a patah up under it, it's pronounced hey. Ha. H-A, ha. But when it's a final hey, that means it occurs at the end of the word, and you have a patah up under that final hey. And that final hey has a mapping in it. Remember, the mapping means to pronounce that H sound. But when the patah is up under it, it's called furtive patah. and you pronounce the patah first, then the H sound. So instead of pronouncing it ha, H-A, you pronounce it ah, A-H. You pronounce the vowel before the consonant. All right? Now also, if there is a letter het, with a patah up under it at the end of a letter, end of a word, you pronounce that patah first. So het has a ch sound. So it'd be ak, A-C-H, ak. So if you have a final hey, or I'll just call it a final tet, excuse me, not tet, a final het, that's that letter that looks just like a hey. So anytime you see hey at the end of a word, or het at the end of a word, look out.
Like in rural, you say rural as an example?
That'd be ruach,
Mm-hmm.
okay? Not ruha,
Right.
be ruach, which we know means spirit, breath, spirit, divine wind, okay? So I'm going to end there. We've gone over the pronunciation of the 9 basic vowels, long and short. There are 5 long vowels, and there are 4 basic short vowels. We went over the Composite 2. We went over the schwa, the vocal schwa. We went over the composite vowels, Hataph, patah, Hataph, sigo, Hataph, pramats. We've gone over the quiescent letters, the diphthongs. You know, we know to look out. Anytime we see a yod or a vav, we have to be careful. Anytime we see hey at the end of a word, we have to be careful. Every time we see het at the end of the word, we have to be careful. And also, anytime we see dots, we have to know the rules about the dot, the rule about the dagesh. Is it a dagesh that only hardens the sound? The only way we know that, we have to be on the lookout for the begad kapet letters. Beit, Gimel, Dalet, Kof, Pei, Tav. Those are the begad kapet letters. When they have a dagesh, it simply hardens the sound. All other letters, it will double it. When we have a dagesh inside of a final hey, meaning that the hey occurs at the end of the word, it's not called a dagesh, it's called a mapi. And it means you pronounce the hey. Otherwise, if there's no vowel up under the hey, you don't pronounce it. So sit down, please, for now. Don't ever get up and interrupt the class. You know better. So as I was saying, we have the final hey with a dot inside of it or a mapi. It means pronounce that H sound. If we have a final hey with no dot or mapi inside of it and no vowel up under the hey, you don't pronounce it. If we have a final hey with a mapi inside of it and a patah up under it, then it's called furtive patah, and we sound the patah, the short A sound, before the final hey, but it has to have a mapi in it. Whenever we have a final het and a patah up under it, we pronounce the patah first and then the het. So that would be a ACH sound, not an HACH, not an H, not an HCH, but ACH, ok. Okay? So Good example of that is resh, a shurik, which is a vowel with a dot in the middle. So that's ru. We know that that vowel is pronounced, that shurik is pronounced double O, so we have ru. And then we pronounce the A, and we have a het there, which is a CH, so ruach, ruach.
Final pay.
No, it's a het. Yeah. Remember, het has a CH sound. You don't see that little space at the upper left hand. Look at the letter hey, and look at the letter het. The het has a little break in the space at the top left, whereas the het has no break. Study your letters. Study your letters. Take a look at their shapes. Let's just do a quick review. Okay? We see that the letter aleph, we see what it looks like. We see the letter bet. You notice its shape. We don't have to go through all of it. You see the letter gimel has sort of two legs at the base there. Now the letter dalet looks like the letter resh, but only the dalet has right angles between its horizontal lines. And it has that little overhang on the back end. But the letter resh has a rounded back end. You flip over, you see the letter resh? You see the difference, the rounded back end as opposed to the right angles and the overhang? Okay, now resh and dalet can also look like final cough. But that final cough would, will be a long line. That's one way to tell. So, but you have to pay attention. Now we see the hey. You see the break in the line on the left at the upper left vertical line. There's a break in the upper left vertical line. When we look down and we look at het, there is no break in that line. So hey and het look an awful lot alike if you don't pay close attention. Okay? Now, look at the letter zayin, number 7, zayin. It's possible you might get that mixed up with a vowel. The vowel curves to the left at the top. The ayin has a the zayin has a downward slant to the right. But if you're looking quick, you can easily get them mixed up. Look at noon. Final noon could look just like a zayin or vowel. The way to tell is that it should be a little longer than a regular vowel, or a zayin. Sonic looks a little bit like final mem. Both are closed, but you have to notice the little tail on the upper left corner of the sonic and the fact that it's rounded. Excuse me. Final pay and final sadi can be confused if you don't know your letters very well. The final sadi, if you don't look close enough, you might call it final noon, or you might call it final pay. So you have to be careful. And looking at the sheen there, remember the dot up on the left means it has an SN sound, S-I-N sound, like sin. And when that dot is over the right, it's S-H-I-N, sheen. Let's take note of the begad kapet letters on the next page. We know bet, gimel, dalet. When they have a dagesh, it hardens the sound. Kaf, pei, tam, it hardens the sound. It does not double them. Any other letter other than those 6, it will double them. Here we look, it says the ayin and the ayin were throat letters at one time. Okay? Sometimes ayin can be silent. If you don't know how to pronounce that guttural. You can see an example of how to pronounce the sheen with the dot on the right. S-H, shalom, at the bottom there. Sheen, Quamats, Lamet, Holum Vav, final mem. S-H-A-L-O-M, shalom. But when the dot is on the left, and there's Quamats up under the sheen, it's Sam. Sam. SN sound with the final mem. Okay? We'll stop there today. Next week, we're going to do syllabication. I may actually do, begin an actual Hebrew letter at that point too, where we look at a Hebrew letter, or might wait another week so that we can practice, we can put it together. We practice the syllabication and the pronunciation of words and letters. And then the following week, since you'll have all the basics, by the end of next week, you will have all the basics to be able to read and pronounce Hebrew. And the following week, we'll do some practice next week, but the following week, we're going to actually just start reading, practicing and reading and doing it. That's the best way. And then we'll also get into the spiritual meaning of the individual letters. We'll cover one letter or maybe 2 every week.
I cannot wait.
Okay?
Okay,
Shabbat Shalom.
thank you.
That's the end of the day. You can make sure you record that and upload it.